I heard this woman screaming, "She's dead."
A brutal killing.
This woman was controlled. She was bound, tied up for a reason.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
He's one of these guys that thinks he's smarter than everybody else.
And he said, "You tell anybody, I'll kill you."
The truth will be revealed.
He thought that he could get away with this.
This poor woman probably begged for her life. It just sends chills all over me.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Nestled between the Indian River and the Atlantic Ocean lies the peninsula of Merritt Island, Florida.
We do have a lot of tourists that come through. It's known for water sports. The whole county is pretty much surrounded by water. A lot of boats, fishing.
But this is a very laid-back county. We're tucked away over here on the coast, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place to live.
But one hot July afternoon, the waterways reveal a grim secret.
The judge that lived on this piece of property, and he was doing yard work. He saw what he thought was a manatee. So he walked to the shoreline. And that's when he saw that it was a woman. He called the sheriff's office, and then I got the phone call.
Brevard County Sheriff's agents Jerry Harrell and Allie Roberts arrive at the scene.
We see a nude body of a female. As a homicide agent, that's not a good day.
The body's in a moderate stage of decomposition, the bloating. It hadn't purged yet, so it was probably twice the size it would normally be. She was tied with rope and some type of duct tape, and it had plastic bags tied to the body.
To catch the killer, investigators will need to unravel the last 24 hours of the victim's life.
The significance of those last movements of your victim are often critical to what happened.
Their first challenge is the woman's identity.
We knew that we had a nude white female, don't know who it is. When you have a name, at least you can do some victimology. You need to start looking at that person. What can you find out about that person? What does that person do for a living? What people are surrounded by that person? We have a fingerprint expert, one of our crime scene techs, and she fingerprints the body.
She is identified as 22-year-old Misty Morse of Indian Harbor Beach.
We find out that she lives a short distance away from there. She lives with her mother. And she grew up here. She's a local girl. Encouraging to me because usually the killer is someone that you know. That gives me a way to go, rather than being an out-of-stater or out-of-towner who was just driven here.
They look to determine how long Misty's body had been in the water.
It can make it more difficult to determine time of death. You have to take into consideration the temperature of the water and control for that. The water may accelerate the internal changes in the body and cause more decomposition at an advanced rate than it would outside the water in cooler conditions.
This is July in Florida. It's hot, the water's warm.
The heat, the insects, the animals, sometimes it's kind of hard to gauge exactly how long a person's been deceased when they're exposed to the different elements.
I'm thinking this body had been in there for several days.
As they start to develop Misty's timeline, a theory forms.
I'm thinking at that point, someone either drove in the dark of night and threw her out of a car, into the river, or she was dumped off of a boat. I'm looking at the body. It has some bags, like grocery store bags, tied to it. So whoever put her there weighted her down, and she was probably on the bottom for a period of time until those rocks or weights that were used busted through the bags, and then she popped up.
The physical evidence presents disturbing insight into their victims' last moments.
There was also a black rubber cord of binding. It was window spline. It's tied around her. She was bound with a piece of nylon rope. It was red and white in color.
There's tape wrapped around the head. She was controlled, she was bound, tied up for a reason. This poor woman probably begged for her life.
They must now decide how much of this harrowing detail to impart to her next of kin.
There's no way of telling somebody in a good way that their loved one is deceased, have been murdered. So the best way to do it I've found over the years is to come out and tell them.
Her mother opened the door and looked at us, and it was obvious that we were detectives. And her mother said, "It's her, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, it's her." Her mother had seen the news coverage and told me that, Misty didn't come home, and she just feared that it was Misty. She had been expecting us. She didn't know what to do. It just sends chills all over me. Being a parent and having children Misty's age at that time, you think of your children as children. I felt so bad for her.
Misty's mother contacts her ex-husband, Bob Morse, now living on the west coast of Florida.
I answered the phone, and I heard her screaming, "She's dead. She's been murdered." And I said, "What? Who is this? What are you talking about?" She said, "Misty, she's dead." I almost fell down. I mean, literally, I almost fell down. I said, "What happened?" She goes, "Somebody killed her. They found her in the water." I said, "Oh." There wasn't anything I could do. It just made no sense at all. The big question is why? What would drive someone to do something like that?
Misty's family provide investigators the details of her life.
Misty's mom started describing Misty, how she was named as a baby, Misty April Morse. She was born on a misty morning.
Misty was very much of a free spirit. She definitely marched to her own tune. At 22, she was just at the stage where she could, get out, go do whatever she wanted to do. I think that at that time, Misty was looking to discover herself and figure out who she was, what she wanted to do, where she wanted to be.
The focus shifts to the last time Misty was seen alive.
Misty's living in a little apartment with her mom. Her mother said that the Wednesday night before, Misty had come home from work around midnight. She said she could hear Misty on the phone talking to someone.
She talked for a few minutes, then a little bit later she received another telephone call.
Misty's mother says the first call came in at 2 a.m. and the second 20 minutes later.
She said Misty opened her door, popped in her room, spun around, asked her, "How do I look?" And Misty was very happy. Misty she said, was going out with someone that she was excited about, someone that she knew. Her mother did not know who that person was. After Misty left, she went back to sleep, got up, and went to work as usual.
Her mom tried to call her a couple times, see what was going on, when she was coming home, all that, and never got a hold of her. I had called her, but not getting a hold of her didn't surprise me. It was not unusual for Misty to take off with friends and go do whatever.
But when she didn't come home the next day, that's when she started worrying.
The details provided by the family, together with the condition of her body, help police determine a likely time of death and a lead on who was responsible.
My opinion, she was last seen early morning hours, Wednesday night going into Thursday morning. She's found on Sunday afternoon. I thought that she had been in the water soon after her mother last saw her.
In the manner in which she left the house, it's pretty obvious that she was leaving with somebody she knew. The person she left with, we were pretty confident it's the person that killed her.
Detectives believe Misty's unidentified caller may be responsible for her murder. They ask her mother for help in identifying who it could have been.
I assured her that we would be there for her and that I would follow this case through. She told me about everybody that she knew in Misty's life.
From the list she provides, one name stands out to her.
Teddy Underwood was I don't know if you'd call him a boyfriend. She met Teddy through a girlfriend of hers. Teddy's a good-looking guy.
Mr. Underwood had dated Misty for a short period of time prior to her death.
Detectives check his background and make an important discovery.
Teddy had other arrests and burglary and some type of sexual assault or battery charge.
When police find a suspect who has some sort of record for sexual assault, it definitely puts a huge flag on that person. They would determine if that person would be a likely suspect to commit murder.
That shot him right to the top of the list.
They use his criminal record to help track him down.
Teddy was a fast talker. He was the guy I had to give a lot of attention to. You're interviewing them, you want to tie them down to a story. Okay, it's not interrogation, it's a fact-finding mission. Just to get a timeline going. And that's very important. We put him on the hot seat. But Teddy responded, you know, he was as cool as a cucumber. And he told me, I said, hey, man, I want to help you. But I know you're thinking it's probably me. He says, I understand that. I says, but it's not me. Teddy described it as a short affair. I mean, they may have hooked up a time or two. He moved on, she moved on. It was just one of those things that was short and sweet.
You're judging what they're telling you. Is it making sense? How are they acting? What's their demeanor? Are they trying to be evasive? Are they forthcoming?
Teddy says he had not seen Misty in over a week, and that he was with his friends in the early hours of Thursday morning.
Teddy had an alibi and no interest in the river or being on boats or anything like that. He was so honest and truthful. He had nothing to hide. I go by that gut feeling, and I just did not have it with Teddy.
As Teddy is cleared, they turn to Misty's autopsy for clues that may help to ID the killer.
There was no obvious bullet holes, no obvious stab wounds, but the body itself can give you clues. As an investigator, when you look at a body that's thrown in the water, that's been blindfolded and gagged, I think it's safe to assume that that person was probably alive when they went in the water. Why else would they be blindfolded and gagged? So if that's the case, drowning is a very high possibility.
There is this misperception in general that if water is found in the airway, in the lungs, and in the stomach, that means that an individual drowned. But in actuality, water can enter the body in those places passively after death. So it doesn't mean definitively that an individual died from drowning just because they have water in their lungs, they have water in their stomach.
The medical examiner just would not give us a cause of death. Now, the manner was clear. Homicide.
The examiner probes further, looking for details hidden from the naked eye.
When you're doing the autopsy, not only are you looking at the body itself, but you're looking at everything attached to the body.
There are things that may show up in microscopic examinations, and you don't know what it means until the investigation is advanced and you have more information.
When you're removing the tape from her head, there's a hair present.
It's a clue, but more work needs to be done for it to pay off.
DNA is a very helpful tool in investigating a death, but it's only helpful if you have something to compare it to.
The pathology work is now complete. Misty's father arrives and immediately provides police with a new name.
Misty was telling me about this new guy that she'd met. He was good looking and he had money and he was an ex-Navy SEAL.
She had a semi-long-term relationship with a guy by the name of Brent Huck. And he talked about how he didn't like Brent. Brent was a guy that bragged a lot, had money, and made everybody know it.
Brent Huck has this persona of being like a bad boy. And I think a lot of the girls and a lot of his friends are attracted to that type of personality.
I know that Misty liked to take chances, like most 22-year-olds. I did when I was 22. I think most of us do. We all think that we're 10 feet tall and bulletproof and gonna live forever. I remember thinking that when she was younger, we wondered if she was gonna make it past 18 because she had seemed to have a real bent for getting into trouble, associating with not good people. But we felt like, she was over that. She had been seeing Brent off and on. I said, look, you can do better than this. You don't need this guy. Get away from him. Just stay away. He's bad news. Of course, as you know, every parent on the planet knows, the fastest way to get your kid to do something is tell them not to do it.
He says, you really need to talk to Brent Huck.
Detectives track him down at his parents' house, an upscale home on Merritt Island.
Brent didn't know we're coming. You know, we're hoping that, hey, this is going to take us somewhere. Knocked on the door, we waited, hear a dog barking. Brent finally comes to the door.
We started talking to him about, you know, his relationship with Misty and you know, how it's been going. He tells us that he's known Misty for like 1.5 to 2 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. They've dated for a while. He said that she even moved in with him for a couple months.
As they talk, Agent Harrell spots something suspicious.
I noticed he had abrasions on his knuckles and hands, and I asked him, how'd that happen? And he says, my dog was pulling me with a leash, and I was on my skateboard, and the leash burned my hands. It's not a burn, it's an abrasion. That's a crazy story.
Detectives bring him down to the station for more questioning.
If you didn't have anything to do with this, this will prove to you that you didn't. He had no problem interviewing with us.
Brent reveals to police his relationship with Misty wasn't really over.
It wasn't really a friend, it was more of a benefit, not really a friendship. It was a, I could go over there, I knew if I talked to her enough, I could still go over there and have sex whenever I wanted to.
He kept her on the string, so to speak.
When was the last time you slept with her? I'd say the 11th. The 11th? Yeah.
July?
Yes.
Was that at her house or your house?
Her house.
This was 9 days before Misty disappeared. Brent then admits things had recently become more complicated.
He sent some friends of his, called him, he says, hey, we saw Misty and Misty's pregnant?
Brent called to confront her the same night she disappeared.
I asked her, I was like, look, you know, what the hell is going on? When I saw her on the 11th, I was like, you're not pregnant. You know, why do I keep hearing this? You really ruined my life.
Brent Huck's admission to phoning Misty the night she died has made him the latest suspect in her murder.
He told us, you know, that he called her and bitched her out and told her to stop saying those things because he had a girlfriend.
I bitched at her, and then we settled it out. I remember calling her back 5 minutes after I talked to her and just saying, you know, real quick, saying thanks and hanging up.
So you bitched about the pregnancy?
And you're looking at what this person is telling you. How does that fit into what you know already?
For detectives, the timing of those calls now becomes critical.
When was the last time you actually talked to her?
I want to say right around 3 a.m., 3 or 4.
This is over an hour after the calls that prompted Misty to leave home.
If he puts his time frame in at 3:30 to 4 o'clock, that would have taken him out of that range.
Brent also claims he was nowhere near her house that night.
When you say you went home, you went...
Yeah, just parents' house? Oh, yeah, parents' house. At that point, I was fairly intoxicated as well. It was a rough night. That's how I described it.
He had been partying pretty hard that night by the time he talked to her on the phone. It's a whole group of people. They're drinking at a couple different bars. He goes to someone's house, they're still partying.
He called another young lady to give him a ride home.
Brent says that by 4 a.m., he was in bed asleep.
And we spoke to his friends who corroborated that.
He had been dropped off by the young girl. He was at his parents' house for the rest of the night.
Despite the potential motive, his alibi seems solid.
Homicide is a 24/7 job. It's very taxing. Because when you go home, you don't take the gun belt off and throw it down and forget. The cases you're working are forever in your mind. You wake up in the middle of the night thinking about something that you need to do or should have done or should have said or should have asked.
Believing the key still lies in identifying Misty's late-night caller, they continue to probe friends and family about her relationships. This brings them to a new name, Bobby Cooper.
I guess Bobby was expecting the law to show up, and we did. We interviewed him, and the guy was all crying. I mean, the guy was upset.
You can learn a lot based on their reactions. It's not necessarily just the words. It could be they start to cry. It could be they overdo the crying. You've conducted so many interviews at this stage that you're relying on your experience to tell you whether that's a real reaction to this scenario or not.
And he told me, he says, hey, I really love this girl. We had just met, and it was a whirlwind, a few days. He's very talkative, and he's answering my questions. He explained when he last saw Misty, they went to a movie, and he'd been calling her and calling her, and he says she didn't answer the phone. I thought maybe that was the end. Maybe that's just her way of ending the relationship. She just won't answer.
Bobby tells police he did finally get through, saying he spoke to Misty the night she disappeared.
I talked to her Tuesday night, and then I talked to her again on Wednesday.
You call her cell phone or what?
Yes. Yeah.
How many times Wednesday did you talk to her?
I talked to her once on Wednesday.
And that was?
7:30, between 7 and 7:30.
He told us he talked to her on the phone, and that's very important.
Bobby explains he tried her again on Thursday afternoon. When he got no response, he left several messages.
One of the things killers will do sometimes is leave messages on a victim's phone to create alibis for the murder.
We see this as an attempt by the killer to throw the police off the scent, or to throw the family off the scent of the trail, and throw the investigation in another direction.
At that moment, Bobby stuns Agent Harrell with an unsolicited admission.
Bobby said I had her driver license. That's one of the things we were looking for, we couldn't account for.
If you have the property of a dead person on you, you better have a good explanation for how you got it. Because if you don't, you're going down for that murder.
The possession of Misty Morse's driver's license puts Bobby Cooper in the spotlight for her murder.
I asked Bobby, how'd you get her license? And he says, I've had it since we went to the movie. She was wearing pants that didn't have pockets, and she just wanted me to hold on to it. He says something to the effect, well, that's one way we're guaranteed to see each other again.
I think in his mind, if he doesn't cooperate, or he gives a hint that he's not cooperating, that we're going to look at him, as a suspect.
Bobby claims he was at home with his family during the time Misty was killed.
He accounted for his time, and his dad verified that. Bobby was not our guy. Time to move on.
As a homicide agent, you have to be very patient in what you're doing. We have multiple agents. Multiple agents interview different people, and at the end of the day, we sit down. Okay, what did your guy say? What did your person say? We just review all those and try to put the pieces together as they fall.
Everybody we had interviewed, they can explain where they were or explain their relationship. We just kept moving forward.
Then, police receive a key piece of evidence they've been badly waiting for.
Misty's phone records, when we got them, told us exactly how many seconds, minutes she spoke to certain phone numbers who had been trying to call her. The phone records is a line-by-line item. It told the story. You can see Bobby Cooper trying to call her over and over again, which corroborated what he said. And what was really important on her phone record is incoming call from Brent Huck's number, twice, just like what he said.
Brent first told detectives the calls were around 4 a.m.
But it was more like 2 o'clock, 2:20 a.m.
It was Brent Huck right back in the time frame of when the mother side of Misty that received these phone calls.
It's easy to lie using the right information, but just maybe changing the time up.
When someone's caught in a lie by police, it definitely sets them up as being a potential suspect, because police will start questioning as to why they did this, why didn't they tell the truth in the first place, and what were the reasons behind them lying, period.
Brent had a rocky relationship with Misty. He's creating these lies, he's living a lie.
Digging into Huck's personal life, investigators discover what may be an even greater motive.
He's got this girl on Palm Beach County, his new girlfriend, who's supposedly well-connected and maybe wealthy or connected to a wealthy family.
Brent and his girlfriend were in the process of buying a house in South Florida, wedding plans. I mean, they were moving forward with their relationship. But Brent had that problem, and that was Misty back here, that he just wouldn't let go. Looking back, you're wondering if that was the catalyst for Misty saying she was pregnant to everybody, knowing that that's going to get back, hopefully, to the girlfriend.
Police decide to pay the woman a visit.
My understanding was she had no knowledge that Brent Huck was having any type of relationship with Misty. As far as she knew, she was the only female in his life at that point.
Concerned her boyfriend is involved in a homicide investigation, she agrees to cooperate.
One of the investigative techniques would be to flush someone out. To have someone call your suspect, who the suspect might be comfortable to speak to. It's just another form of getting them to speak, getting them to come out of the closet to say something.
She tells Brent that the police want to speak with her about Misty's murder.
Yeah, they're really serious about you.
I know.
Is there anything you want to tell me now before it comes out later?
There's no way about it. I'm not talking on my phone. Period.
Are you getting mad at me now?
I'm not gonna talk on the phone. If you want to get down to the bottom of this, come talk to me. God!
It's not serious.
Goodbye.
It's pretty obvious from the phone call, he's got some anger issues.
And I think he's being found out, you know, that he has this other thing on the side and all that. And of course, she wanted to know, and she wasn't happy about it. And that, I think, was a big part of understanding Brent Huck. That was my first I got you moment. I'm thinking, here we go, this is the guy.
With Brent Huck back in the spotlight, investigators revisit his main claim of innocence, his alibi.
He had told us before he got home around 3:30 or so in the morning.
They track down Lauren, the young woman who took him home from the night's partying.
She just drove him home. She was going that way. It was no big deal.
But Lauren says she picked Huck up at 2 a.m., 2 hours earlier than the time he first claimed he was home asleep. Which means he could have driven to Misty's house soon after.
We actually asked Lauren, being the last person we know that had contact with him, did he have any injuries on his hands? No, no injuries. So it had to happen that night.
Based on this new information, investigators decide to pay Huck another visit.
Brent talked to a lawyer or two. Of course, they told him not to have any more contact. But we wrote a warrant to go back to the house to do more searching. They find the window spline in the garage. They find cell rope. They find under the sink these Publix bags.
A lot of people have spline in their house. A lot of people may have white tape at their house. A lot of people may have plastic bags at their house. What's the chances of having all three? They were able to determine that that spline came from the exact same machine as the bindings on her body, from the same factory, the same company. Same with the tape. They were able to identify the tape as the exact same tape that was found on her body, exact same company, same make, same physical characteristics, same coloring. A match. And being the last person who talked to her on the phone. So all these things are adding up. It's a lot of circumstantial, but it's all, you know, compounding against him.
But the most compelling evidence proves to be the hair found on Misty's body.
It's an animal hair. It found out to be dog hair. And Brent Huck had a dog.
The DNA really locked it in. This is the dog. It's not just the breed of dog. This is the dog.
In October 2002, Brent Huck is indicted on kidnapping and first-degree murder charges. Key to proving his guilt is the reconstructed timeline.
I think Misty got home from work. Brent was out partying. He hears the rumor that she's telling people that she's pregnant with his baby. So Mr. Huck has got to do something about this. He has Misty claiming that she's the mother of his baby, and he cannot afford to let his new girlfriend hear about this. He's got to shut her up somehow.
He ends up home probably around 2 o'clock. He's mad. He's a hothead. He's arrogant. He's spoiled.
He called her, probably under the pretense to come over and have a sexual relation that they normally have.
He drove there. He called a quick, "I'm downstairs." That explains for the very, very short call that lasted like 10 seconds. She goes downstairs, gets in the car, off they go to his house.
The whole time I think he had it in his mind to go ahead and kill her.
He was able to incapacitate her. He got her tied up, her hands, her feet. Weighed her down with these bags filled with rocks. And took a roll of duct tape and wrapped her head. He puts her in a boat.
At this point, Misty is still alive.
I think that she struggled to get loose. She moved her head around, got the duct tape off of her mouth, begging for her life. He rolls her off the boat in the deepest part of the river. And she sinks.
I think he dumped her in the river while she was alive, knowing that she was going to die.
Despite the strong physical and circumstantial case against him, Huck pleads not guilty.
I don't want to say it's an airtight case, but we're very confident in our case. How do you explain all this? You can't. I think he thought that he could get away with this, maybe a plan in his mind how he was going to do this and how it was going to pan out, but things weren't going his way.
I remember, I think I was holding my breath, and all my muscles were clenched up. And as soon as they said guilty on both counts, I remember, thank goodness.
28-year-old Brent Huck is sentenced to life in prison.
Is it justice? I think justice would be let her daddy spend an hour with him. That would be justice.
I don't want him dead. I want him to spend the next 500 years in jail. And I want him to remember every day of his life what he did. So whatever anyone calls justice, I don't feel it. I'm just glad that he can't do it to anyone else.